After 3 years of paying rent to live in his own basement, Robert sold the house and watched his daughter realize she had been scamming a millionaire. The eviction notice is sitting on my nightstand when I wake up at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm. 47 years of getting up for the steel mill will do that to a man. Your body becomes a clock that never needs winding. But this morning, something's different. The white envelope with my name typed across the front wasn't there when I went to bed last night. Michelle must have slipped it under my door after I fell asleep. My daughter has always preferred delivering bad news when she doesn't have to watch my face react to it. I sit up slowly, feeling every one of my 74 years settle into my joints, like rust in old metal. The basement room is dim and damp, the way basement rooms always are, even the expensive ones. The ceiling is 7 feet high, just tall enough that I don't bump my head when I stand. Just low enough to remind me that I am living underground like some kind of mole. This used to be storage space before Michelle converted it for me 3 years ago. Converted. That is what she calls it when you throw some drywall up around a concrete floor and call it livable. The windows are just slits near the ceiling. Basement windows that show nothing but the feet of people walking by on the sidewalk above. I have gotten good at identifying my neighbors by their shoes. The envelope feels heavier than it should. 24-pound paper, professional quality. Michelle always did have an eye for presentation, even when she is screwing someone over. I don't need to open it to know what it says. Michelle's been building up to this for weeks. Little comments about rising costs, unexpected expenses, the burden of supporting an elderly parent on a fixed income. She has been particularly fond of that phrase lately, fixed income, like it is some kind of terminal diagnosis. But I open it anyway, because the performance requires it. The dance we have been doing for 3 years demands that I play my part as the struggling retiree, grateful for whatever scraps of dignity my successful daughter allows me to keep. The letter is printed on letterhead for Riverside Property Management, a company that exists only in Michelle's imagination and her computer's word processor. Very official, very legal looking. The kind of notice that makes old people panic about ending up on the streets. Fair Mr. Robert Chen, *fee due to increasing operational costs and property tax assessments. We must inform you of a rent adjustment effective immediately. Your monthly rental obligation will increase from $2,518 to $2,950, representing a 17.2% adjustment necessary to maintain current service levels. *fee, please remit the adjusted payment by the 15th of this month or face immediate termination of your rental agreement. We regret any inconvenience this may cause. *fee sincerely. *fee Patricia Wells, Property Manager Fee Patricia Wells. I almost smile at that. Michelle's been using her middle name Patricia for her fake property management company. Even her fraudulent paperwork has to sound respectable. $432 more per month. On top of the $2,518, I am already paying to live in a basement room, in what Michelle thinks is somebody else's house. What my daughter doesn't know, what she has never known, is that she has been charging me rent to live in a house that I bought outright 18 years ago with money that fell from heaven like manna in the wilderness. The 14th of February 2006, Valentine's Day. Eleanor was still alive then, still fighting the Alzheimer's that would take her piece by piece over the next 2 years. I bought her a lottery ticket that morning. Same numbers I had been playing for 20 years. Eleanor's birthday, our wedding anniversary, the kids' birthdays. A romantic gesture for a woman who was forgetting my name more often than she remembered it. $1, $2 million after taxes. I told no one. Not Eleanor, who would have wanted to give half of it away to charity. Not David in Phoenix, who was already calling twice a month with stories about his restaurant's cash flow problems. And especially not Michelle, who had started making pointed comments about our old house and how we should downsize to something more manageable before we became a burden on our children. Instead, I smiled at the lottery officials, signed the paperwork, and deposited the check in a new account at a different bank. I told Eleanor I had won $50, enough to take her out for a nice dinner. Not enough to change our lives. But it did change everything, just not in ways anyone could see. When Eleanor died and the vultures started circling Michelle with her spreadsheets calculating the value of our furniture, David with his suggestions about liquidating assets to fund his latest business venture. I made my move. I bought this house, a modest 2-story colonial in a decent neighborhood, and told them I had found a place to rent. For 18 years, I have been paying my own daughter rent to live in my own house. For 18 years, I have listened to her complain about maintenance costs and property taxes, nodding sympathetically while knowing that every bill that comes to this address has my name on it. Not hers. The irony would be funny if it weren't so pathetically sad. I set the eviction notice on my nightstand next to the picture of Eleanor, the only photograph Michelle allows me to display in her house. Eleanor's smiling in that picture, the way she smiled before the disease ate her memories. She is wearing the blue dress I bought her for our 40th anniversary, the one that made her eyes look like summer sky. If Eleanor were here now, she would tell me to stop playing games. She would say that secrets are like cancer, they grow in the dark until they consume everything healthy around them. She always was the wise one in our marriage, the one who could see through people's pretenses to what they really wanted. What would she think of what Michelle has become? What would she say about David, who calls twice a year and always needs money? Would she understand why I have kept the truth hidden for so long? Or would she be disappointed in the man I have become? I dress slowly, choosing a clean flannel shirt from the narrow closet Michelle installed when she converted this storage room into living space. She does my laundry once a week and charges me $23 for detergent and fabric softener. Fair market rate, she explained, showing me a printed breakdown like I was one of her accounting clients. Everything has a price in Michelle's world. She has turned our relationship into a business transaction, complete with invoices and service charges, room and board, $1,800, utilities, $340, food allowance, $280, laundry service, $23, miscellaneous household expenses, $75. And now, thanks to Patricia Wells and her fictional property management company, an additional $432 for the privilege of existing in my own house. The morning routine never changes. I climb the narrow stairs from my underground room to the kitchen where Michelle is already dressed for work. Dark hair pulled back in the severe bun she has worn since her divorce 5 years ago. She is checking emails on her phone while her coffee grows cold, the way she does every morning. Efficiency is Michelle's religion, and she worships at the altar of productivity. Morning, I say, taking my assigned seat at the small table by the window. She glances up briefly, her eyes already calculating. Did you see the letter from the landlord? The performance begins. I am the aging father, worried about money, dependent on his daughter's charity. She is the dutiful child, making sacrifices to keep her elderly parent housed and fed. We both know our lines by heart. I saw it. I pull the letter from my pocket, pretending to study it for the first time. This is a pretty big increase. I know. Michelle's voice takes on that patient tone she reserves for clients who don't understand tax law. But Dad, look at it realistically. Property values in this neighborhood have gone up 30% in the last 2 years. The landlord says he has been absorbing the increased costs out of his own pocket, but he cannot do it anymore. The landlord says, if only she knew she was talking to him. I let my shoulders slump slightly, the way a man does when the weight of the world becomes too heavy to carry. $400 is a lot of money on my pension. I know it is difficult. Michelle softens her tone just enough to sound sympathetic without actually being helpful. But think about what you are getting for that money. A private room, all utilities included, meals, laundry service. If you were in assisted living, you would be paying 4 times this amount. Assisted living. The sword of Damocles that hangs over every conversation about money. Michelle never threatens directly, she is too smart for that. But the implication is always there, hanging in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Pay up or find yourself warehoused with the other discarded elderly, waiting for death in a sterile facility that smells like disinfectant and despair. What she doesn't understand is that I could buy the nicest assisted living facility in the state and still have money left over for a Caribbean cruise. The lottery winnings, carefully invested over 18 years, have grown to $2.47 million. I could write a check for a penthouse suite overlooking the ocean and not feel the dent in my checking account. But then David and Michelle would want explanations. They had demand to know where the money came from, why I had hidden it, how much of their inheritance I had wasted on comfortable living. They would calculate every dollar I had spent on myself instead of preserving it for them. Every investment I had made without consulting their financial wisdom. They would resent me for being anything other than the struggling pensioner they need me to be to justify their neglect. So I play the role. I frown at bills, worry about expenses, make small sacrifices that Michelle can point to as evidence of my gratitude. I buy generic groceries when she is watching, drive my 15-year-old Honda, until she suggests maybe it is time I stop driving altogether. Wear the same 3 shirts in rotation because new clothes are an unnecessary expense. I will need some time to think about it, I tell her, folding the fake letter with hands that shake just slightly. Not from age, from the effort of not laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Don't think too long, she warns, checking her watch with the practiced efficiency of someone who bills time in 6-minute increments. The landlord wants an answer by Friday, and Dad. She pauses at the kitchen door, briefcase in hand, armor of professional competence firmly in place. I can only do so much to help. My own expenses are going up too. Of course they are. Michelle's BMW payment, her condo downtown, her membership at the country club where she networks with other successful professionals who have mastered the art of turning family relationships into profit centers. After she leaves for work, I sit alone in the kitchen that belongs to me. Drinking coffee I pay for twice, once to the grocery store, once to Michelle as part of my food allowance. The morning sun streams through windows I chose, illuminating cabinets I installed, warming floors I had refinished after Eleanor's funeral. This house holds 4 decades of memories. Eleanor and I brought both children home from the hospital to this house. We celebrated Christmas mornings in the living room, hosted birthday parties in the backyard, sat on the front porch in the evenings watching the neighborhood children learn to ride bicycles. Michelle took her first steps in the hallway upstairs. David said his first word, Daddy, while sitting in the high chair that is now collecting dust in the attic. Eleanor and I made love in the master bedroom for 38 years, whispered our dreams and fears in the darkness, planned our retirement in the same room where she later forgot my name. Now it has all been reduced to a rental agreement with monthly service charges. The phone rings, jarring me from my reverie. David's name flashes on the screen, and my stomach immediately tightens. My son calls so rarely that every call feels like an emergency until I realize he just wants money. Hey Dad, how is everything going? David's voice has that forced enthusiasm that means he has already rehearsed this conversation. In Phoenix, it is 3 hours earlier, but he has been awake long enough to work up the courage to make this call. I am doing fine, son. How is the restaurant business? It is never fine. In the 12 years since David opened his restaurant, it has been perpetually on the verge of either spectacular success or complete failure. Every phone call is an update on the latest crisis that threatens to destroy everything he has worked for. Oh, you know how it is? Staffing issues, supply chain problems, customers who think a hamburger should cost $3. He launches into a familiar litany of complaints about the food service industry, warming up for the real purpose of his call. Actually, Dad, that is kind of why I am calling. I have got an opportunity to expand into catering, but I need some startup capital. There it is. The reason for the early morning call, the forced cheerfulness, the careful preamble about business challenges. David needs money, and he is hoping his elderly father might have squirreled away some savings from his modest pension. How much are you talking about, David? Not much, really. Maybe 25,000. I know money's tight for you, especially with what you are paying Michelle for room and board, but this could really turn things around. I would pay it back with interest. Of course. Good interest. Better than anything you are getting from the bank, $25,000. For David, it is the difference between success and failure, between realizing his dreams and watching them crumble. For me, it is less than 1% of my portfolio. Pocket change that I could transfer this afternoon without affecting my lifestyle. But David doesn't call to ask about my health. He doesn't visit for holidays or remember my birthday. He doesn't know that Michelle charges me rent, or that I have been living in a basement room for 3 years. He only calls when he needs something, Usually money. Sometimes just emotional support for his latest crisis. I wish I could help, son, but things are pretty tight. Michelle's been having to help me make ends meet as it is. The silence on the other end tells me everything I need to know about David's priorities. He is not calling to catch up with his father. He is calling to pitch an investor who happens to share his DNA. Oh, right. I forgot about your situation. The disappointment in his voice is real, but so is the speed with which he moves to end the conversation. Well, it was worth asking. Right. You never know unless you ask. That is true. I agree. Playing my role as the supportive but financially limited father. I hope things work out for you. Yeah, me too. Well, I should probably get going. Early lunch crowd today. Take care of yourself, David. You too, Dad. The line goes dead. And I am alone again with the echoes of a relationship that exists only when one of us needs something from the other. David will go back to his restaurant. His dreams of expansion temporarily dampened by his father's poverty. He will tell his wife that the old man doesn't have any money to spare, that they will have to find another way to fund their ambitions. If only he knew that his impoverished father could write a check for his entire restaurant and still have enough left over to buy the building it sits in. I spend the morning doing light housework, dusting furniture I chose, vacuuming carpets I paid for, organizing belongings in a house that bears my name on the deed. Michelle allows me to help with chores in exchange for a modest reduction in rent. $50 a month off my bill for maintaining my own property. Generous of her. The work feels good, purposeful. My hands remember what it is like to be useful, to contribute something beyond monthly payments and grateful compliance. For 47 years, I built things at the steel mill bridges, buildings, infrastructure that would outlast the men who made it. Now I dust shelves and vacuum floors, small tasks that disappear as soon as they are completed. Around noon, I walk to the mailbox at the end of the driveway I paid to have repaved 2 years ago, bills addressed to me, junk mail addressed to current resident, and a thick envelope from Harrison and Associates Financial Planning. My quarterly investment report. I wait until I am back in my basement room to open it, away from Michelle's prying eyes and suspicious questions. The numbers are better than I expected, even in a volatile market. Conservative investments, diversified portfolio, steady growth compounded over nearly 2 decades. My financial advisor, a man Michelle has never met, has turned my lottery windfall into a fortune that could support 3 generations of my family. Current portfolio value, $2,473,847. More money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes, sitting in accounts that my children don't know exist. Money that could solve David's business problems, pay for Michelle's country club membership, fund college educations for grandchildren I barely know. Instead, it sits in investments while I pay rent to live in my own house and listen to lectures about the burden I represent to my successful children. I should feel proud of my financial discipline, my ability to plan for the future. Instead, I feel tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. Tired of pretending to struggle while sitting on a fortune. Tired of being treated like a burden when I could buy and sell everyone in my family. Tired of playing the grateful dependent while my own children calculate the cost of keeping me alive. The eviction notice sits on my desk next to the investment statement. 2 documents that tell the complete story of my life. One shows a desperate old man facing homelessness, unless he can scrape together an extra $432 a month. The other shows a wealthy retiree who could solve everyone's problems with a single phone call to his broker. But what would happen if I told the truth? If I showed Michelle the investment statements, the bank records, the deed to this house with my name on it? If I revealed that her struggling tenant father is actually the landlord she has been lying to for 3 years? Michelle would be furious about the deception, but not because I had hurt her feelings. She would be angry about lost opportunities, miscalculated strategies, money that could have been extracted more efficiently. If she had known the true scope of her father's resources, she had demand explanations, apologies, and immediate access to funds she would consider rightfully hers. David would calculate how much money I had wasted on conservative investments instead of funding his restaurant. He would resent every dollar that had earned compound interest instead of propping up his failing business. He would want to know why I would let him struggle when I could have solved his problems with pocket change. And then what? Would they suddenly become loving children? Or would they just become more expensive to maintain? Would knowing about my wealth make them treat me with respect? Or would it just give them bigger numbers to resent when I inevitably disappointed them? The afternoon passes slowly. I try to read, but the words blur together. I attempt to watch television, but the canned laughter feels like mockery. Everything in this room, my clothes, my books, my modest possessions, tells the story of a man living on the margins, grateful for whatever kindness his family can spare. It is all a lie. At 3 of the clock, the doorbell rings. I hear Michelle's heels clicking across the floor above, then muffled conversation. A man's voice, professional but apologetic. After a few minutes, the front door closes and Michelle's footsteps pause at the top of the basement stairs. "Dad, can you come up here for a minute?" I climb the stairs, my knees protesting with each step. Michelle is standing in the living room with a stack of papers in her hand, her face pale. "What is wrong?" I ask, though I suspect I already know. The landlord's real estate agent was just here. Her voice is carefully controlled, the way it gets when she is trying not to panic in front of clients. He says the house has been sold. We have 30 days to vacate. I let my face register the appropriate shock. "Sold. But you have been such good tenants. Surely he would have given you first right of refusal." That is what I thought. Michelle sits heavily on the couch, still clutching the papers. But apparently the new owner wants to move in immediately. There is nothing we can negotiate. "What does this mean for us?" I ask, sitting across from her. Michelle looks up at me, and for the first time in years, I see genuine fear in her eyes. Not the calculated concern of a woman managing a difficult asset, but the raw terror of someone who has lost control of her carefully ordered world. "I don't know, Dad. I honestly don't know. Finding a place that will take both of us. With your situation, it is going to be difficult and expensive. My situation, my age, my limited income, my status as someone's dependent elderly parent, all the things that make me undesirable to landlords and inconvenient to family members. Maybe it is time to start looking at assisted living facilities." I suggest gently. Michelle's response is immediate and sharp. "That is not happening. We will figure something out." But I can see the calculations running behind her eyes. The cost of a larger apartment that could accommodate both of us. The security deposits, moving expenses, the disruption to her carefully managed budget. For the first time, Michelle is facing the possibility that her elderly father might actually cost her money instead of generating income. "There might be another option," I say carefully. Michelle looks up hopefully. "What do you mean?" "I have been thinking about that money your mother left me. The life insurance policy. This is a dangerous game I am playing. Eleanor did have a small life insurance policy, $25,000 that went toward her funeral expenses, and the last of her medical bills. But Michelle doesn't know exactly how much it was or what happened to the remainder." "I thought you said you spent all of that on Mom's funeral and medical bills." "Most of it," I agree. "But I may have been more conservative with the expenses than I let on. There might be enough left to help with deposits and moving costs." It is not exactly a lie. There is money available to help with those expenses, about $4 million worth, but Michelle doesn't need to know the full scope of my resources. Not yet. "How much are we talking about, Dad?" "Maybe $5,000–6,000. Not enough to solve all our problems, but enough to help us get settled somewhere new." Michelle's face brightens slightly. It is not a fortune, but it is something. A small buffer against the financial chaos that is about to engulf her organized life. "That would help," she admits. "I will start looking at apartments tomorrow, places that allow older tenants." Older tenants. Another euphemism for the inconvenient reality of aging in a society that values productivity above all else. That evening, Michelle spends hours on her laptop scrolling through rental listings and making phone calls. I can hear her upstairs, her voice growing more frustrated with each conversation. Pet-friendly apartments are easier to find than senior-friendly ones. Apparently, I remain in my basement room, listening to my daughter struggle with a problem I could solve in 5 minutes with a single phone call. I could buy a house tomorrow, pay cash, put both our names on the deed. I could eliminate her financial stress and give us both a fresh start. But what would that cost me? My carefully maintained secret, the control that comes from being underestimated. The freedom of knowing that my children love me for who I am, not what I can provide. Except they don't love me for who I am. They tolerate me because they think I am useful. And barely that. David calls only when he needs money. Michelle houses me only because I pay rent. Neither of them has asked about my health, my happiness, my hopes for the remaining years of my life. Maybe it is time to change the equation. Around 10 of the clock, Michelle knocks on my door. Dad, can I come in? She enters without waiting for permission, something she has never done before. The crisis has shaken her usual respect for boundaries. I have been looking at apartments all evening, she says, sitting on the edge of my bed. There are some possibilities, but they are all more expensive than what we are paying here. And most of them want first month, last month, and security deposit up front. How much more expensive? At least $800 a month for a 2-bedroom. Maybe $1,000 for anything in a decent neighborhood. $800 to $1,000 more per month. For Michelle, it is a significant financial strain. For me, it is a rounding error on my monthly investment income. What about that money you mentioned? She asks. The insurance money from Mom. Here is the moment. I could continue the charade, dole out a few $1,000s to help with moving expenses, and watch my daughter struggle with higher rent for the rest of my life. Or I could begin to reveal the truth. Slowly, carefully, in ways that might preserve whatever relationship we have left. I have been thinking about that, I say. Maybe it is time I was more honest with you about my financial situation. Michelle's eyes sharpen. After 3 years of managing my supposed poverty, she can smell money like a bloodhound. What do you mean? Your mother and I were always very conservative with our finances. We saved more than you kids ever knew. Put money away for emergencies, for retirement, for the future. How much money are we talking about, Dad? The hunger in her voice is unmistakable. This is the moment I have been dreading and anticipating for 18 years. The moment when my daughter discovers that her poor old father isn't quite what he seems. Enough, I say simply. Enough that we don't have to worry about security deposits or higher rent. Enough that I could afford a nicer place. If I wanted one, Michelle stares at me for a long moment, processing this information. How much is enough, Dad? Are we talking about $10,000? 20. More than that. How much more? I can see the wheels turning in her head, recalculating 3 years of assumptions about my financial limitations. If I have money, real money, then everything changes. My status as a dependent parent, her role as a sacrificing daughter, the entire foundation of our relationship for the past 3 years. Why don't we start looking at some nicer places? I suggest places where we could both be comfortable. I will cover the additional costs. Dad, I need to know what we are working with here. If you have savings. If you have been hiding money all this time. I haven't been hiding anything. I say, which is technically true. I have been hiding everything, not just some things. I have been conservative about spending because I wanted to make sure I had enough to last through retirement. But if we are going to be forced to move anyway, maybe it is time to use some of those savings for a better quality of life. Michelle stands and begins pacing my small room, her mind racing through the implications. If I have significant savings, then her careful budgeting of my expenses has been unnecessary. Her calculations about my monthly contributions have been based on false assumptions. She has been managing poverty that doesn't exist. How long have you had this money? She asks. Your mother and I started saving seriously after you kids left home. 40 years of careful planning adds up. Another technical truth wrapped in misdirection. 40 years of careful planning, plus one extraordinary windfall that changed everything. And you have been living in my basement, paying me rent, letting me manage your expenses, when you could have afforded your own place all along. Now we are getting to the heart of it. Michelle's anger isn't about the deception, it is about the inefficiency. She has been working with incomplete information, making decisions based on data that was fundamentally flawed. I liked living here, I say, which is the first outright lie I have told in this conversation. I liked being close to family. I liked feeling useful, contributing to the household expenses. But Dad, if you have money, real money, then we could have been doing things differently. I could have been charging you market rate for rent. We could have renovated the basement properly, made it a real apartment, market rate. Even in this moment of revelation, Michelle's first instinct is to calculate how much more money she could have extracted from me. Maybe this is an opportunity for both of us, I suggest. A chance to start fresh. Find a place where we are both comfortable. Michelle stops pacing and looks at me directly. I need to know exactly how much money we are talking about. Dad, I cannot plan anything without real numbers. And there it is. The moment I have been building toward for 18 years. The choice between maintaining my secret and preserving what is left of my relationship with my daughter. Let me make some phone calls tomorrow, I say finally. Talk to my financial advisor. See what options we have. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. Michelle nods, but I can see the frustration in her eyes. She wants numbers, specifics, concrete data she can plug into her mental spreadsheets. But for tonight, she will have to settle for promises and vague reassurances. After she leaves, I sit in my basement room and contemplate the choice I have just made. Tomorrow, I will have to decide how much truth to reveal, how quickly to pull back the curtain on 18 years of careful deception. The eviction notice is still on my nightstand, but it feels different now, less like a threat and more like an opportunity. A chance to stop being the man my children need me to be and start being the man I actually am. I pick up Eleanor's photograph and study her face in the dim light. She has been gone for 16 years. But I still find myself seeking her counsel in moments like this. What would you do, sweetheart? I whisper to the image. How do you tell your children that everything they think they know about you is wrong? Eleanor doesn't answer, of course, but I think I know what she would say. She would tell me that secrets are like seeds planted in darkness. They only grow into something healthy when they are brought into the light. Maybe it is time to start planting new seeds. The next morning, I wake before my alarm for the first time in years. I dress carefully, choosing my best shirt, the one Michelle hasn't seen me wear since Eleanor's funeral. Today feels like a day that deserves better than my usual thrift store wardrobe. Michelle is already in the kitchen when I arrive. But she is not checking emails on her phone. She is staring at her coffee cup, lost in thought. Morning, I say, taking my usual seat. Morning, Dad. She looks up, and I can see she has been awake most of the night, thinking about our conversation. Did you sleep okay? Like a baby, I lie. I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, rehearsing different versions of the conversation we are about to have. I have been thinking about what you said last night. Michelle begins carefully. About your savings, about finding a new place. And I think we should look at some options together. See what is available in our price range. Our price range. She has already started thinking of my money as our money, which is both predictable and slightly disappointing. I will make some calls this morning. I tell her. Set up a meeting with my financial advisor. You should probably come with me, so you understand the full picture. Michelle's eyes light up. She loves full pictures, complete data sets, information she can analyze and manipulate. What time? Let me call and see what is available. Maybe this afternoon. I can reschedule my client meetings, she says quickly. The woman who bills her time in 6-minute increments is suddenly willing to clear her calendar to learn about her father's mysterious savings. After Michelle leaves for work, I sit in the quiet kitchen and consider my options. I could continue the gradual revelation, slowly increasing the amount of money Michelle thinks I have until it reaches some plausible but not shocking figure, $50,000. Maybe $100,000. Enough to improve our living situation without fundamentally changing the balance of power in our relationship. Or I could show her everything, the investment statements, the bank records, the deed to this house. I could lay out 18 years of careful deception and let her absorb the full magnitude of what I have hidden. The third option is the one that has been growing in my mind since last night. I could sell the house, take the money, and disappear. Buy a condo in Florida, A cottage in North Carolina, anywhere that my children's expectations cannot follow me. Start over as the man I actually am, not the man they need me to be. But that would mean abandoning any hope of a real relationship with my children. It would mean accepting that we are too far gone, too damaged by years of deception and manipulation, to ever find our way back to something resembling love. I am not ready to give up yet, not entirely. I call Harrison and Associates and schedule an appointment for 2 o'clock. Richard Harrison has been managing my investments for 12 years, since my original advisor retired. He has never met Michelle, never even heard her name mentioned. He knows me only as Robert Chen, a client with substantial assets and conservative investment preferences. Will you be bringing anyone else to this meeting? Richard asks when I call. My daughter. She is going to be involved in some financial planning going forward. There is a pause on the line. In 12 years, I have never mentioned family members or discussed inheritance planning. As far as Richard knows, I am a wealthy widower with no living relatives, of course. He says professionally, I will prepare a comprehensive portfolio overview. Will you be discussing estate planning or focusing on current liquidity needs? A little of both, I tell him. We are exploring some housing options. Richard is too professional to ask questions, but I can hear the curiosity in his voice. A sudden introduction of family members, combined with housing discussions, usually means one of 2 things. Either a client is planning to make significant gifts to relatives, or they are being pressured by family members who have discovered their wealth. I hope it is the former, but I suspect it might be the latter. At noon, Michelle calls to confirm our appointment. Her voice has that carefully controlled excitement she gets when she is about to close a big deal with a new client. I cleared my whole afternoon, she tells me. And Dad, I have been thinking about what kind of place we should look for. Maybe something with a proper apartment in the basement, or a mother-in-law suite. Something designed for multi-generational living. Multi-generational living. Another euphemism, this one for I want to keep collecting rent from my father while upgrading to a nicer house. We will see what the numbers look like, I tell her. Let's understand what we are working with before we start making plans. At 1:30, Michelle arrives home early from work. She has changed clothes since this morning, trading her usual business attire for something slightly more formal. She wants to make a good impression on my financial advisor, to be taken seriously as someone who should be included in important financial discussions. We drive to Harrison and Associates in Michelle's BMW, the leather seats and climate control a stark contrast to my 15-year-old Honda. Michelle chatters nervously during the drive, asking questions about my advisor, about how long I have been working with him, about what kind of investments I might have. I am just trying to understand the situation, she explains when I don't provide detailed answers. I want to be prepared for whatever we discuss. The offices of Harrison and Associates occupy the top floor of a downtown office building, all glass and steel and the kind of understated luxury that whispers rather than shouts about money. Michelle's eyes widen slightly as we enter the reception area, taking in the expensive furniture and original artwork. Mr. Chen, the receptionist, greets me warmly. Mr. Harrison is ready for you. And this must be your daughter, Michelle Patricia Wells. My daughter introduces herself, extending her hand with professional confidence. She is using her full name, the formal version she reserves for important business meetings. Richard Harrison's office overlooks the city, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a view that probably costs more per month than most people's salaries. He is a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from managing other people's wealth for decades. Robert, good to see you. He shakes my hand warmly, then turns to Michelle. And you must be Michelle. Your father has never mentioned having such an accomplished daughter. Michelle preens slightly at the compliment, though I notice she glances at me curiously. In 3 years of living together, I have never mentioned having a financial advisor, let alone one who operates from offices like these. Please, sit down. Richard gestures to chairs arranged around a small conference table. I have prepared a comprehensive overview of your father's portfolio. But first, let me ask what prompted this meeting. Are you looking at making some changes to your investment strategy? We are facing a housing situation, I explain. Our current rental is being sold, and we need to find new accommodations. Michelle wanted to understand what resources we have available. Richard nods and opens a folder thick with documents. Well, you certainly have options. Let me walk you through the current portfolio. He slides a summary sheet across the table to Michelle, who picks it up eagerly. I watch her face as she scans the numbers. See her eyes widen as she processes the information. This says, she begins, then stops, looking at me with an expression I cannot quite read. This says the total portfolio value is $2,473,847. That is correct. Richard confirms. Your father has been a very disciplined investor over the years. Conservative approach, consistent contributions, excellent long-term growth. Michelle stares at the paper in her hands as if it might disappear. $2.4 million. Give or take, Richard agrees. Of course, that is the current market value. The actual basis is considerably lower, so there would be tax implications for any major liquidations. But for housing purposes, your father has significant liquidity options. I watch Michelle struggle to reconcile this information with everything she thinks she knows about my financial situation. 3 years of collecting rent from a man who could buy her accounting firm without affecting his lifestyle. 3 years of managing my fixed income when I have more money than she will likely earn in her entire career. How long has Dad been working with you? She asks Richard, her voice carefully controlled. About 12 years now. He came to us when his previous advisor retired. And this money, where did it come from originally? Richard glances at me, unsure how much I want revealed. That is really your father's story to tell, he says diplomatically. Michelle turns to me, and I can see the questions building behind her eyes. Not just about the money, but about why I have hidden it. What it means for our relationship, how it changes everything she thought she knew about the past 3 years. Dad, she says quietly, I think we need to talk. I nod, feeling the weight of 18 years of secrets settling on my shoulders. Yes, I agree, I think we do. Richard excuses himself diplomatically, giving us privacy to have what he clearly recognizes as a difficult family conversation. Michelle and I sit in silence for a moment, the portfolio summary lying between us like evidence of a crime. $2.5 million. She says finally, yes, all this time, when you were paying me rent, when you were worried about utility bills, when David was calling asking for money. Yes, why? The word comes out as barely a whisper. Why did you lie to us? And there it is. The question I have been dreading and preparing for 18 years. The moment when I have to explain why I chose deception over trust, secrecy over transparency, manipulation over honesty. Because I knew what would happen if I told the truth. I say simply, David would have spent every penny within 5 years, and you would have calculated exactly how much of it should be yours. Michelle flinches as if I have slapped her, but she doesn't deny it. We both know it is true. So instead you let me charge you rent for living in my house. My house, I correct gently. I bought this house 3 years ago. After Eleanor died. You have been living in my house. Not the other way around. The color drains from Michelle's face. You own the house. I am the landlord you have been lying to about rent increases. For a moment, I think she might faint. She grips the arms of her chair, breathing rapidly, trying to process the complete inversion of everything she thought she understood about our living arrangement. You have been playing games with me, she says finally. For 3 years, you have been sitting in that basement room, letting me think I was helping you. When really I was helping you. I finish. The mortgage you thought you were paying to a landlord, that was going to me. The utilities, the maintenance, the property taxes, all paid from my accounts. You have been living rent-free for 3 years, Michelle. I have been subsidizing your lifestyle, not the other way around. The truth hangs between us like a blade. Michelle stares at me with a mixture of shock, anger, and something that might be embarrassment. Why are you telling me this now, she asks. Because I am tired, I say simply. Tired of pretending to be poor. Tired of being treated like a burden. Tired of paying rent on my own house while listening to lectures about what I can and cannot afford. What do you want from me? Dad, an apology, gratitude? What? I want honesty, I tell her. For once in 3 years, I want an honest conversation about our relationship. Not as landlord and tenant, not as benefactor and dependent, but as father and daughter. Michelle looks out the window at the city below, gathering her thoughts. When she turns back to me, her expression is guarded, but not hostile. I don't know how to have that conversation. She admits, everything I thought I knew about you, about us, about the last 3 years. It has all been a lie. Not all of it, I say. I do love you, Michelle. I always have. That is why I have been willing to play this game for so long. I wanted to be close to you, even if it meant pretending to be someone I am not. But why the pretense? Why not just tell me the truth from the beginning? Because the truth would have changed everything between us. You would have seen me as a resource to be managed, not a father to be loved. David would have seen me as a bank to be tapped, not a father to be respected. Michelle considers this, and I can see her struggling with the accuracy of my assessment. She wants to deny it, to insist that money wouldn't have affected our relationship, but we both know better. So what happens now? She asks finally. Now we start over, I suggest. With honesty this time. No more games, no more pretending. I will buy us a house, a real house, designed for both of us to be comfortable. You can stop charging me rent for living in my own basement. We can try to build a relationship based on something other than financial transactions. And if I cannot do that, if I cannot stop seeing you as a resource to be managed, it is a fair question, and I appreciate her honesty in asking it. Then we will both know where we stand, I tell her, and we can make decisions accordingly. Michelle nods slowly, still processing the magnitude of what she has learned. 2 hours ago she thought she was housing her impoverished elderly father out of duty and modest profit. Now she has discovered that her father is wealthy enough to buy her professional practice and still have money left over for retirement. I need some time to think about all this, she says, of course, and I want to see the deed to the house. I want to understand exactly what our situation has been. When we get home, I promise. Richard returns to his office with impeccable timing, giving us a few minutes to compose ourselves before we continue the financial discussion. So, he says, settling back into his chair, have you had a chance to discuss your housing needs? We are going to look at buying something, I tell him, probably in the 400,000 to 600,000 range. I will need about 100,000 liquid for the down payment and closing costs. That is very manageable, Richard confirms. Would you like me to arrange a transfer to your checking account, please? And Richard, I think it is time to add Michelle to my accounts. As a beneficiary and eventually as a co-owner. Michelle's eyes widen at this announcement. After 3 years of thinking she was supporting her father, she is now being offered joint ownership of more money than she has ever seen. Are you sure about that, Dad? I am 74 years old, Michelle. It is time to start planning for the future. And despite everything that has happened between us, you are still my daughter. I want to make sure you are taken care of. The paperwork takes another hour. Account signatures, beneficiary forms, power of attorney documents. Richard explains everything patiently, making sure Michelle understands her new responsibilities and authorities. When we finally leave the office, Michelle is quiet during the drive home. She is processing not just the financial information, but the complete restructuring of our relationship that comes with it. This is going to take some getting used to, she says as we pull into the driveway of the house I own. For both of us, I agree. That evening, we sit in the kitchen, my kitchen, and look through real estate listings together, not as a desperate daughter trying to house her impoverished father, but as two adults planning a shared living arrangement with adequate resources to make it comfortable for both parties. It is strange how money changes everything, even when nothing else has changed. Michelle is still my daughter. I am still her father. But the dynamic between us has shifted completely. She is no longer the successful child supporting her struggling parent. I am no longer the grateful dependent, accepting whatever charity she can spare. We are equals now. or at least closer to equals than we have been in years. What about this one? Michelle points to a listing for a house with a separate apartment. Main house for you, apartment for me, or we could do it the other way around. What would you prefer? I ask. She considers the question seriously, and I realize it is the first time in 3 years that anyone has asked what she prefers about our living arrangement. I think I would like the main house, she says. If that is okay with you, I could help with maintenance and upkeep, manage the property taxes and insurance. Sounds reasonable. We continue looking through listings, but I am not really paying attention to Michelle's commentary. I am thinking about something else entirely, about justice, about consequences, about what my children truly deserve after 18 years of treating me like a walking ATM. Around 10 of the clock, Michelle closes her laptop and looks at me across the kitchen table. Dad, I owe you an apology. For what? For the last 3 years. For treating you like a tenant instead of my father. For calculating the value of keeping you alive instead of just caring about you. I look at my daughter, really look at her, and see the same calculating expression she has worn for years. Even now, even after discovering my wealth, she is working an angle. The apology isn't remorse. It is a business strategy. You know what, Michelle? I say quietly. You are right. You do owe me an apology, but more than that, you owe me justice. Her face changes. The mask of contrition slipping. What do you mean? I mean that sorry doesn't give me back 3 years of living in a basement while you profited from my fake poverty. Sorry doesn't return the $90,000 you stole from me in fake rent payments. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation, the disrespect, the daily reminders that I was a burden on your charity. Michelle straightens in her chair, her accountant's mind already calculating. Dad, if this is about money, we can work something out. I told you I would pay back the rent money. It is not about the money, I tell her. It is about consequences. For 18 years, you and David have treated me like an inconvenience that occasionally pays dividends. You have calculated my worth based on what I could provide, not who I am. Well, now it is my turn to do some calculating. What are you saying? I stand up from the table, feeling more clear-headed than I have in years. I am saying that tomorrow, I am going to sell this house. I am going to take my money and disappear from both your lives. You will never see another penny from me, never benefit from my death, never have the chance to inherit anything. You cannot do that. Michelle's voice rises in panic. I am your daughter. We are family. Family? I laugh, and it comes out bitter. When David calls, does he ask about my health or my happiness? When you charge me rent, do you consider my feelings? When either of you looks at me, do you see a father or do you see a bank account with legs? Michelle's silence is answer enough. The next morning, I wake up with perfect clarity about what needs to be done. I dress in my best suit, the one I wore to Eleanor's funeral. The one Michelle insisted was too expensive for everyday wear. Today feels like a day that deserves ceremony. I call Richard Harrison first. Robert, good morning. How did the house hunting go yesterday? Change of plans, Richard. I want to liquidate everything. All investments, the house, everything. I want it converted to cash and transferred to new accounts that Michelle has no access to. There is a pause. That is a significant change from yesterday's discussion. May I ask what prompted this? I have decided my children don't deserve my money. They have made it clear they only value me as a financial resource. It is time they learned what life is like without that resource. I see. And the beneficiary designations we set up yesterday? Revoke them. All of them. I am changing my will completely. Richard is too professional to ask for details, but I can hear the curiosity in his voice. I will need you to come in to handle the paperwork. This kind of restructuring requires multiple signatures and legal documentation. I will be there this afternoon. After I hang up, I call David. Dad, I was hoping you would call. I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I understand your concerns about the restaurant. What if we started smaller? Maybe just $10,000 to upgrade the kitchen equipment? David, I interrupt. I called to tell you something important. I am leaving town permanently. You will not be hearing from me again. What, Dad? You cannot just disappear. We are family. No, we are not. Family cares about each other's well-being. Family doesn't only call when they need money. You are a middle-aged man who has treated his father like a personal ATM for 20 years. That is not family, that is exploitation. Dad, I know I have made mistakes, but we can work this out. I love you. You love my money, David. You have never once asked about my happiness, my health, my dreams for retirement. Every conversation has been about what I can do for you, never what you might do for me. That is not true. I care about you. Prove it. When is my birthday, David? Silence. What medication am I taking for my arthritis? What books have I been reading? What did I do last weekend? More silence. That is what I thought. Don't call me again, son. Find another bank to fund your failures. I hang up before he can respond. Michelle appears in the kitchen an hour later, dressed for work but moving slowly, like someone who didn't sleep well. I have been thinking about what you said last night. She begins, have you? Maybe we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. The shock of learning about your money. The stress of having to move. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I pour myself coffee and sit at the table that belongs to me, in the house that belongs to me, looking at the daughter who has been stealing from me for 3 years. I meant every word. Dad, be reasonable. We can work this out like adults. You have more money than you could ever spend. I made some mistakes in how I handled our living arrangement, but that is behind us now. We can start fresh. You are right about one thing, I do have more money than I could ever spend. But you know what? I would rather burn every penny than leave it to children who see me as nothing more than an inheritance waiting to happen. Michelle's professional composure cracks. You cannot mean that. Watch me. I stand and walk to my room, pulling out the folder I have kept hidden for 18 years. Bank statements, investment records, the deed to this house, lottery documentation, everything that proves exactly how wealthy I really am. I spread it all out on the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. Look at it, Michelle. Really look. $2.4 million. The house worth $500,000. 18 years of compound interest on money I won and never told you about. Her eyes devour the documents, her accountant's brain automatically calculating totals, percentages, possibilities. All of this could have been yours and David's someday. I continue. Your inheritance, your financial security, money that could have solved every problem you have ever had. It still can be, she says eagerly. Dad, I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can build a better relationship going forward. No, we cannot, because you are doing it again right now. You are not apologizing because you hurt me. You are apologizing because you want access to my money. Even now, even after I have shown you exactly how you have been living a lie for 3 years, you are calculating how to get back in my good graces. I gather up the documents and put them back in the folder. This morning, I am changing my will. Everything goes to charity. The Alzheimer's Research Foundation, in your mother's memory. They will use the money to help people, not to fund failing restaurants or subsidize the lifestyles of ungrateful children. Michelle's face goes white. You cannot do that. I am your daughter. David is your son. You cannot leave us nothing. Watch me. This is because you are angry, you are hurt, and you want to punish us. But Dad, this is too much. This is cruel, cruel. I laugh, and it comes out sharp and cold. Was it cruel when you charged me rent to live in my own house? Was it cruel when you made me feel like a burden every day for 3 years? Was it cruel when David only called me when he needed money? That is different. How? How is it different? Michelle struggles for an answer, but we both know there isn't one. She cannot explain why her cruelty was justified, but mine isn't. Why her selfishness was reasonable, but my response is excessive. You raised us, she says finally. You are our father. You owe us something. I raised you to be decent human beings. You chose to become something else. I don't owe you anything. I walk to the front door and pick up my car keys. Where are you going? To my lawyer's office. To make sure that when I die, My money goes to people who will use it to help others, not to support the kind of people who charge their elderly father rent to live in his own basement. Dad, please. Let's talk about this. Let's find a compromise. There is no compromise, Michelle. For 3 years, you have shown me exactly who you are. You have demonstrated beyond any doubt that you value money more than family, profit more than love, calculation more than compassion. I am simply responding in kind. This isn't you. This isn't who you are. You are right. The man you have been living with for 3 years wasn't me. He was a performance. A character I played because I wanted to believe my children might love me for who I am instead of what I have. But that man is gone. This is who I really am, someone who will not tolerate being treated like a convenience. I open the front door and pause. You have until this evening to move out. After tonight, this house goes on the market, and you become someone else's problem. Dad. Wait, but I am already walking to my car, leaving Michelle standing in the doorway of the house. She thought she owned, finally understanding that her poor, dependent father was never poor, or dependent at all. At Richard Harrison's office, I signed document after document, officially restructuring my entire financial life. New accounts, new beneficiaries, new will. Everything goes to charity except for a modest amount to cover my remaining years in a retirement community far from here. Are you sure about this, Robert? Richard asks as I sign the final papers. This completely disinherits your children. There is no going back once these documents are filed. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. What if they contest the will? Let them try. I am competent. I am acting voluntarily. And I have 18 years of documentation showing exactly how they have treated me. No court will overturn my decision to leave my money to charity, instead of to children who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. When I return home that evening, Michelle's car is gone. The house is empty, except for my belongings, and a note on the kitchen table. For Dad, I don't understand why you are doing this, but I hope someday you will forgive us and change your mind. I love you. Michelle Fay. I read the note once and throw it in the trash. Even now, even after losing everything, she still doesn't understand. She still thinks this is about forgiveness, about changing my mind, about finding a way back into my good graces. She doesn't understand that this isn't about punishment. It is about justice. 3 weeks later, I move into Sunset Manor, a luxury retirement community 2 states away. I pay cash for a penthouse apartment with a view of the mountains, a place where no one knows about my children, or my money, or my past. The staff treats me with genuine respect, not because they want something from me, but because I am paying them fairly for their services. I make friends with other residents who value conversation and companionship over financial advantage. For the first time in 18 years, I am surrounded by people who see me as Robert Chen the person, not Robert Chen the potential inheritance. David calls occasionally, at first angry, then pleading, then threatening legal action. I don't answer. Michelle sends letters, emails, attempts at reconciliation through mutual acquaintances. I ignore them all. 6 months after I disappear from their lives, I receive a call from a private investigator, Michelle hired to find me. Mr. Chen, your daughter is very concerned about you. She just wants to know that you are safe and well. Tell my daughter that I am better than I have been in years. Tell her that I am surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I have. And tell her that if she wants to know what it feels like to have family who cares about you, she should try being the kind of person who deserves that. A year later, Richard Harrison calls with an update. Your former house sold for $520,000. The proceeds have been transferred to the Alzheimer's Research Foundation. As you requested, your children's attempts to challenge the will have been unsuccessful. Good. I also thought you should know your daughter's accounting firm is struggling financially. She has had to downsize significantly, and your son's restaurant finally went out of business. I see. Do you want me to convey any messages to them? I think about this for a moment. Michelle and David are both facing the consequences of a lifetime of poor decisions and burned bridges. They are learning what life is like when the family bank is permanently closed. No messages. I tell Richard, they made their choices. Now they get to live with them. I hang up and return to my book, a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt that I am reading for my book club. Outside my window, the mountains are painted gold by the setting sun, and I can hear my neighbors laughing on their balconies as they share evening drinks. This is what peace feels like. This is what it means to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. Eleanor would have understood my decision, I think. She would have seen the justice in it, the necessity of teaching consequences to children who never learned them naturally. My money will fund research that might prevent other families from losing their memories the way we lost Eleanor. It will help people, heal people, give hope to families facing the same devastation we faced. That is a better legacy than funding more failed restaurants or subsidizing the comfortable lives of people who never learned to appreciate what they had. Justice isn't always pretty, but it is necessary. And after 18 years of being treated like a walking ATM by my own children, justice feels sweeter than revenge ever could. I turn the page in my book and smile at the sunset. A wealthy man who finally learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. My children chose money over love, calculation over compassion, exploitation over respect. They got exactly what they deserved, nothing. And I got exactly what I deserved, peace.